I stood barefoot on the cold pavement, watching the last delivery truck vanish down Main Street with my bakery's logo peeling at the edges like forgotten promises. 5 years of early mornings, burnt fingertips and half-spoken dreams, gone, erased like flour from an apron. And now I was back in Dayton, Ohio, clutching a duffel bag heavier with failure than flour. You'd think family might offer a warm welcome, a gentle word, maybe a second chance. Instead, my sister Lindsay leaned in with that smirk she'd perfected since high school and said, "Guess bread doesn't make money. Maybe you can flip pancakes." Have you ever had your rock bottom moment mocked by your own blood? That instant when the very people you hoped would catch you kick the last rung off the ladder. This is the story of how I rebuilt my life from quiet ashes, how I turned grief into grace and silence into strength. But first, let me take you to the day everything I worked for crumbled. My name is Elise Harper, and until last week I owned a small bakery in Cincinnati. Owned, past tense. It still feels like a lie when I say it. Sweet Rise was more than a business. It was my pulse, my therapy, my everything. When I opened it 5 years ago, I imagined warm community tables, cinnamon in the air, and regulars who knew me by name. For a while, it was exactly that. But the economy didn't care about my vision or my debt. And dreams don't pay utility bills. I'd stayed until the very last box was loaded, nodding to Sam, the driver, as he closed the door on the van. He gave me a look that lingered too long, like he knew it wasn't just pastries he was hauling, it was the weight of my failure. The shop windows reflected my hollow expression as I locked the door for the final time. I thought I'd cry, but I didn't. I was too tired, too numb. 2 hours later, I was back on my childhood porch in Dayton. The same chipped paint on the railings. Same hum of distant lawnmowers. The only thing different was me. I rang the bell. Lindsay opened the door, still in her gym gear, her ponytail perfect, her judgment sharp. "Well, well," she said, eyeing my bag. "Guess bread doesn't make money. Maybe you can flip pancakes." I tried to smile. "Hi to you too, Linz. Mom and Dad are in Florida, golf tournament. You could have texted, you know." "I wanted to come home." She shrugged, stepping aside. "Suit yourself, just don't expect fanfare." The house smelled like lemon cleaner and detachment. I dragged my bag into my old room, still painted that ridiculous lavender I loved at 16, and sat on the edge of the bed. The silence pressed against my chest. There were no balloons. No, "you tried your best." No understanding. Just Lindsay clattering dishes in the kitchen, humming like nothing had happened. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't home anymore. Not even close. I didn't unpack. The bag sat in the corner like a bruise, dark, quiet, and refusing to be ignored. I stared at the ceiling that night, listening to the faint clink of Lindsay's wine glass in the kitchen and the hollow sound of her laughter through a phone call. She was talking to someone about a new Pilates instructor or a dog or maybe both. I couldn't care less. What kept echoing in my mind were her words. "Flip pancakes." She said it like a punchline, as if all I was good for now was syrup and spatulas. That was the moment I realized I couldn't stay. The next morning I was gone before sunrise, left a note on the table. Just 5 words scribbled fast. "Thanks, I'll figure it out." No confrontation, no drama, just escape. The Greyhound station in Dayton always had that certain scent of half-cleaned vinyl and missed chances. I stood in front of the destination board like someone who'd lost a map and her sense of self all at once. St. Louis. It wasn't a choice. It was a direction. I bought a one-way ticket and boarded the night train, my duffel now stuffed with slightly more resolve than regret. It rocked gently through sleeping towns as I watched the reflections of gas stations and farmland in the window, patches of nothing that somehow felt safer than the everything I'd just left behind. By the time I stepped onto the platform in St. Louis, the sky was blushing pink, and the streets smelled faintly of coffee and late summer rain. I had no job, no plan, just one name scribbled in the back of my old journal. Smokehouse Row. An old friend of a friend once told me they had decent food and didn't ask for resumes, just proof you could handle a grill. I walked there. It was a squat, weathered brick building with grease stains on the awning and a neon open sign that buzzed like it had asthma. Inside, the smell hit me first. Slow smoked ribs, tangy vinegar, something burnt in a way that felt honest. The man behind the counter eyed me warily as I stepped in. He was broad-shouldered, probably in his early 60s, wearing a faded Cardinals cap and a shirt that read beef. "It's what's for dinner again." "You looking for food or trouble?" he asked without looking up from his chopping board. I blinked. "Honestly, just a job." He stopped mid-slice. Kitchen's hell, pays worse, we don't do pity hours. I don't need pity, I need heat. He studied me then. Ever cleaned a smoker at 2 a.m.? I nodded, and seasoned it after. He gestured with his knife toward the back. Mops near the sink, we'll see how long you last. That's how I started. I spent the next 4 nights working behind the scenes, scraping grease, learning the rhythm of the kitchen. My hands blistered. My back ached. I bled once. Nobody cared, including me. At night, I wrote in a battered leather journal I kept tucked under my mattress at the cheap motel down the block. Half recipes, half daydreams. I called them flavor stories, blends of spices and memory, like bourbon-soaked peaches that reminded me of my mother's canning jars or smoked paprika rubs that felt like my bakery's ghost coming back to life. And somewhere in between mopping floors and carving brisket, I started to feel it, the quiet stirring of something I thought I'd lost forever. Purpose. But I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because in the eyes of the world, I was just a failed baker scraping plates in a dive diner. But in my own mind, I was writing the first chapter of something no one saw coming. They called me the whisper in the kitchen. I barely spoke those first few weeks. Not out of fear, out of necessity. When you're rebuilding from scratch, silence becomes a shield. And besides, in that cramped, grease-slicked kitchen, noise was currency. Everyone had something to prove. I proved myself with the blade. Diced onions so finely they wept before I did. Carved brisket with the grain until the knife became a second pulse in my hand. Learned the timing of the smokers like they were breathing creatures. Low and slow, coaxing out flavor like secrets. By week 6, I was doing more than mopping floors. I was tweaking the spice blend for the dry rub, swapping out the watery coleslaw for something with bite, green apple, red chili, fresh dill. I didn't ask permission. Just tried it once during the lunch rush and waited. No one said anything. They just ate. And came back the next day asking for more. The owner, Ed, whose full name turned out to be Edgar Paulson, grunted his approval without making eye contact. "Keep doing whatever you're doing," he muttered. "Sales are up." That was all I needed. I moved out of the motel into a shoebox apartment above a pawn shop. The plumbing rattled like it was haunted, but I had a stove and space to think. Each night, I'd strip off my smoke-stained apron, make a cup of tea, and pull out my journal. My flavor stories were taking shape. I wasn't just writing dishes, I was dreaming spaces, tables made from reclaimed wood, a menu that told a story with every plate. Coffee that tasted like a new beginning, served with desserts shaped like memories. I called it Hearthline, not a bakery, not a diner, something different. A cafe where food whispered who you were before the world told you to be someone else. And I wrote all of it down, quietly, obsessively. One night, Ed found me in the back hallway, scribbling on a napkin while the dishwasher rattled away. "You ever sleep?" he asked, startling me. "Sometimes," I said, pocketing the napkin like a secret. He squinted at me. "You're different from the others. Most people in this kitchen want out you. You're building something, ain't you?" I didn't answer, but he nodded anyway, as if he already knew. "You've got the kind of quiet that turns into thunder when no one's paying attention," he said. Then he walked away. After that, things shifted. He started letting me prep the sauces without supervision, trusted me to train the new hires. Eventually, he stopped correcting my orders altogether. The crew noticed. They started calling me boss lady, half joking, half curious. It felt surreal, like I was living someone else's comeback story, but it was mine. I still kept in touch with no one, not Lindsay, not my parents. Dayton felt like another life, like I'd died and come back as someone who knew how to wield silence and fire in equal measure. Then, on a random Thursday, the local paper sent a journalist to profile St. Louis' hidden smokehouse gem. Ed grumbled about it for hours, then shoved me toward the dining room when the reporter arrived. "If anyone talks about the food, it's you," he said. "You made it what it is." I froze. I hadn't been Elise Harper, owner, in a long time. I was just a shadow behind a grill, but I nodded. I told the journalist about spice balance, emotional flavor, and how food could be memory and meaning all at once. He listened like I was saying something worth printing. It rattled me. When the article came out, my name was front and center. Elise Harper, the calm fire behind Smokehouse Rose Flavor Revolution. The phones didn't stop ringing for days. Ed tossed the paper on the prep counter, his expression unreadable. "If this keeps up," he said, "you might have to think bigger than brisket." I smiled for the first time in weeks, because that's exactly what I'd been doing. The Sunday after the article dropped, we had a line out the door by 10:45 a.m. By noon, we'd run out of cornbread. By 2, Ed stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching me like I'd summoned some kind of miracle. "You realize we're doing triple what we did this time last month," he muttered, chewing on the edge of his thumbnail. "You turned this pit into gold." I wanted to laugh, but I just kept ladling gumbo, sweat sliding down my spine. I didn't feel like gold. I felt like someone hanging on by a thread, and yet in control for the first time in years. That night, after we locked the doors, Ed tossed me a worn key. "Store's yours tomorrow, I need the day off." Just like that, without a ceremony or a title change, I became the one running the place. And it didn't fall apart. In fact, it soared. I streamlined the prep, changed the order cadence, built an inventory chart that tracked what we sold and when. I added 2 new lunch specials, both based on my flavor stories, and by the following weekend, regulars were ordering them by name. One customer, a woman named Dr. Pillar Monroe, who wore statement earrings and always ordered her brisket lean, stopped me after her meal. "Who are you?" she asked. I blinked. "Just the cook." She smiled like she knew a secret. "There's nothing, just about what you're doing back there." A week later, an envelope arrived with her name on the return address. Inside was a handwritten note and a business card for something called Junction Grove Collective, a small group of local investors, mostly women of color, who funded food startups and purpose-led hospitality ventures. "If you ever decide to open your own place," the note read, "I'd like to be first in line." I stared at the card for nearly an hour. Was I ready for that dream to stop living in a journal and start breathing in real air? The idea terrified me. What if I failed again? What if Hearthline turned into just another broken chapter in my life? But that night, I wrote a full concept menu. Not for anyone else, for me. Saffron cornbread with blueberry butter, lamb chili with cocoa and clove, cold brew that's steeped with crushed cinnamon stick and orange peel, dessert flight named Mother Tongue, 5 miniature cakes, each telling a different story from my life. I didn't sleep. The next day I stayed after close, running my hand over the stainless steel counter like it was a page I was about to turn. And I made a call to Dr. Pillar Monroe. When she picked up, her voice was as warm as the tea I hadn't even brewed yet. "I've been waiting," she said simply. The meeting happened a week later in a downtown co-op cafe that smelled like cardamom and ambition. 3 women from the collective sat around a small table, notebooks open, espresso shots untouched. I told them my story. Not the polished one, the real one. The bakery that folded, the family that mocked, the long train ride to St. Louis, the burned fingers, the flavor stories, the silence that made space for the dream. They didn't interrupt once. When I finished, one of them, a woman named Tasha, who wore a bold red head wrap and the calm of someone who'd rebuilt her life twice, smiled. "You're not asking for permission," she said. "You're showing us what's already been born." Another leaned in. "Do you want partners or patrons?" I blinked. "What's the difference? Partners shape it with you. Patrons believe in what you've already created." I swallowed. "Then I want patrons." And just like that, we began talking numbers, timelines, potential locations, branding me, a failed baker, now a potential business owner again. I walked home that night with one foot still in disbelief, but the other planted firmly in decision. This time I wouldn't tell my family. This dream wouldn't be shaped by their doubt or small talk. It would be built in my name, brick by quiet brick. 6 months later, I stood under the gold-lettered sign that read Hearthline. The name had once lived in the pages of a journal. Now it gleamed over the front door of my very own restaurant. It was surreal. The first Hearthline location was nestled in a corner lot near the Delmer Loop, where street performers and foodies collided in equal measure. We kept the bones of the old diner, chrome trim, checkerboard floors, but layered it with warmth. Hand-woven light fixtures, second-hand books on every table, a soft jazz playlist looping under the clink of coffee spoons. We opened quietly. No grand opening party, no press release. Just an open sign and the smell of warm vanilla, mesquite smoke, and citrus zest pulling people in off the sidewalk like gravity. And they came, not in a rush but steadily. Curious faces drawn to something they couldn't quite name. We built our rhythm in silence. I trained my staff slowly, kindness first, then technique. I had zero interest in building a Gordon Ramsay-style kitchen. I wanted calm. I wanted care. I wanted to prove that excellence didn't need to shout to be heard. My crew felt it. You could see it in the way they plated dishes like rituals, handled produce like it had stories. That culture, more than the food, became the real heart of Hearthline, and it spread. A local influencer, Olivia Bishop, known for food tour and million-view reviews, wandered in on a whim. She ordered the Hearth Bowl, smoked chickpeas, turmeric couscous, preserved lemon yogurt, and charred fennel. She posted a 5-minute rave that night, describing it as a warm hug in bowl form, like someone fed your childhood back to you with better lighting. The next morning, we had a line down the block. By month 4, I was running 2 dinner seatings and prepping for brunch 3 days in advance. I rotated the menu every 2 weeks, each cycle built around a different emotion. Comfort, risk, nostalgia, forgiveness. It wasn't just a restaurant, it was a conversation. People started coming not just for food, but to feel something they couldn't name. We kept comment cards at every table, simple prompts like, "What memory did this taste like?" Or "Who does this flavor remind you of?" And the answers, heartbreaking, hilarious, beautiful. One woman wrote, "This peach tart tastes like my grandmother's porch in Georgia before the divorce." Another, "The rosemary chicken reminded me I haven't felt joy in 6 months. Thank you." We put those notes on a wall near the restroom under the heading, "The Hearth Speaks." It became our signature. One Friday night while prepping for service, my phone buzzed. A local real estate developer, a woman named Jessa Nguyen, had emailed about a potential second location. "I heard your story," she wrote. "I want to help write your next chapter." It felt fast, too fast, but I couldn't deny it. Hearthline was no longer an idea, it was a movement. People were hungry, not just for flavor, but for connection, for gentleness, for a reminder that rebuilding didn't have to be loud or performative. It could be deliberate, quiet, even graceful, so I said yes. 3 months later, the second Hearthline opened, sleeker, with more open space, community tables, and a rooftop herb garden. The original held the soul, but this one had wings. I started seeing our name in newsletters, food blogs, even airline magazines. "The Anti-Hustle Kitchen," one headline called it, "a place where calm becomes cuisine." And yet, no one in Dayton knew. Lindsay still thought I was waitressing somewhere, or maybe she stopped wondering at all. My parents sent generic texts once a season. "Hope you're doing well." They hadn't asked where I lived in over a year. It used to hurt. Now it felt like armor, because I'd found something stronger than their approval. Self-definition. It started with a reservation under a familiar last name. I didn't see it right away. Our host took the call, jotted it in the book like any other. "Engagement party, 20 guests, full tasting menu. Client booked through a planner." A routine Saturday booking. Nothing unusual until I saw the name, Lindsay Harper. My stomach dropped. I stared at the ink on the page like it might rewrite itself. My sister. My sister who hadn't returned a single text since I left Dayton. My sister who, last time we spoke, made a joke about flipping pancakes as if I'd tumbled into failure and brought shame with me. And now she was bringing her engagement party to Hearthline, without knowing it was mine. I could have canceled, called the planner, blamed a double booking. I could have slipped out the back that night, let my team handle it while I disappeared into a weekend road trip. But I didn't. I wanted to see her walk through my doors, not out of spite, out of curiosity. Would she even recognize the space I built? Would she recognize me? The night of the party, I stayed behind the scenes until the last possible minute. Hearthline was humming. The golden hour glow soft through the windows, candles lit, staff polished. The tables had been set with our handmade place cards, each printed with little quotes about home and hope. I watched through the kitchen pass as guests trickled in, well-dressed, buzzing with that specific tone people get when they're trying to look important on social media. Clinking glasses, selfies, compliments about the wine pairings. Then she walked in, Lindsay. She looked exactly the same. Perfect posture, hair swept up, pearls on her ears, and perfection in her smirk. She laughed before I could even process the shock, laughed like she owned the air in the room. I waited, watched. The moment came when the planner introduced herself and gestured toward me, smiling. "That's our head chef and concept creator, Elise Harper." Lindsay's face froze. It was brief, just a flicker, but I saw it. Recognition, realization, and something else she couldn't hide fast enough, panic. She played it cool, of course, nodded once, smiled like it didn't matter. Turned back to her fiancé, a sharp-jawed man named Colin who had the personality of a credit score. The night unfolded with careful choreography. My team served each course like clockwork, and Lindsay avoided my gaze like it cost money. I stayed professional. No jabs, no speeches. Just food exactly as I designed it. Elegant, intentional, emotional. And for dessert, I chose something personal. A new creation. One I hadn't named yet. It was a bourbon-soaked almond cake with lavender glaze, topped with candied lemon peel, the very flavors I once dreamed about in that St. Louis motel. I brought it out myself, set it gently in front of Lindsay. She blinked, startled to see me at the table. For the briefest moment, I thought she might say something, an apology, a joke, anything. But all she said was, "Nice work." Then she picked up her fork and sliced through the cake like it owed her something. I didn't respond, I just smiled and walked away. The following Monday, the event planner called to rave about the engagement party. The family was interesting, she said with a diplomatic laugh, but the food, Elise, it stole the night. One of the guests asked if you catered private dinners. Do you? I thanked her, then hung up slowly, still playing back the look on Lindsay's face when I served that final plate. Not anger, not jealousy, shock. Not because I succeeded, she could have imagined that, but because I'd done it without her. She hadn't seen the hours or the ashes. She hadn't seen the motel floors, the 3 a.m. dishwashing, or the scribbled flavor notes on napkins. She missed all of it, and yet she'd walked into my story's second act like she had front-row tickets. For days, I expected a follow-up call. A text, an explanation, even a half-hearted apology. Nothing came until it did. 1 week later, on a drizzly Thursday, I was closing up at the original Hearthline when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, distracted, still mentally tallying inventory. Elise! The voice was shaky, fragile in a way I had never heard from her. Lindsay! A pause, then quietly, quickly, like if she spoke too loud she'd collapse. He left, Colin. He cleared out our accounts and disappeared. The words fell into my ear like ice. I sat down slowly on a milk crate by the walk-in cooler. Wait, what? I know you're probably gloating, she stammered. And I deserve it, but I don't know who else to call. Mom and Dad are on a cruise, I can't reach them. My breath caught in my throat. What happened? We were planning the wedding. He said he'd take care of the finances so I could focus on the details. I logged in yesterday and everything was gone. Savings, joint account, the business loan he said he was managing for me. All of it, I think he took out credit in my name. It was like listening to someone describe a storm they swore would never come. I remembered her saying, "Guess bread doesn't make money." Now her life was burned toast and a bitter aftertaste. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "Look, I hate asking this, but could you help me?" she whispered. "Just until I figure things out." There it was, the ask. I could have said no. Should have. That version of the story would be neater. Satisfying even, but I remembered myself at my lowest. I remembered silence. Cold rooms, no money, no safety net, just grit and a grease-stained apron. And something else too, a simple truth I'd learned over those long months. Grace is a form of power, so I didn't say no. But I didn't offer money either. "I can't give you cash," I said, steady but kind. "But I can offer you work." She didn't respond right away. I waited, letting the offer hang between us. "A job?" she asked finally. "Yes, I need a new sous chef at Hearthline," I said. "Starting wage is fair, hours are early, there's no room for shortcuts, but it's honest work, and you'll have a place to land while you get back on your feet." I expected resistance, pride, excuses, but all I heard was a long, soft exhale. "When do I start?" The next morning, she showed up wearing jeans too stiff and eyeliner too sharp for kitchen work. But her eyes, those were new. Wide, tired, uncertain. My team didn't know she was my sister. I didn't offer the context. I just introduced her the same way I had everyone else. "This is Lindsay. She'll be shadowing the line today." She started on prep, chopping carrots, peeling garlic, cleaning greens. Her manicured hands trembled around the knife. She moved slower than the others, more awkwardly, but she didn't complain. Not once. For the first time in our lives, I watched her struggle quietly. And I didn't step in to save her, because growth isn't something you hand someone. It's something they pick up with blistered fingers and earn bite by bite. That night after service, Lindsay lingered behind to wipe down the counters. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly, not meeting my eyes. "I know. I wouldn't have," she added. "I know that too." She paused. "But maybe that's why you're the one with 2 restaurants, and I'm the one asking for help." I didn't respond. Just handed her a clean towel and walked back to my office. Let her sit with the silence. Because sometimes clarity doesn't need to be spoken. It just needs to echo. Lindsay lasted 10 days before the fallout came knocking. It was a Monday morning, quiet and gray, the kind that wraps your thoughts in fog. We were midway through prepping for a private lunch event, roasting beets, searing duck, reviewing wine pairings, when I stepped into my office and saw 5 missed calls from an unknown number. Then the text came, "Call me, it's about Lindsay." It was from my mother. My stomach turned. I hadn't spoken to either of my parents in almost a year, not since I left Dayton. Not since the bakery fell and they decided distance was more comfortable than support. I called back. She answered on the first ring. "Elise," she said in that clipped tone she used when pretending not to panic. "It's about your sister. What happened?" There was a pause. Then, "Colin drained everything, all their accounts. He took out loans in her name. She has nothing, not even her apartment. She didn't want to tell you, but she's staying with us now. It's humiliating." "She's working with me," I said. "She's staying afloat." "You gave her a job." The surprise in her voice twisted something deep in me. "I offered her dignity," I said flatly. "Something none of us gave each other much growing up." There was a pause, then almost begrudgingly, "She told us that you've been kind." I didn't answer. Then came the line I'd been bracing for. "Elise, would you be willing to help financially?" I blinked. "You mean send money?" "She's overwhelmed. Everything's been repossessed. The wedding deposits are gone, the credit cards." "I'm not a bank, Mom," I said quietly. "You have 2 restaurants," she replied, as if that meant the vault was endless. I breathed in through my nose. "I offered her something better than a check. I gave her a way forward. If she wants to walk it, she can." Silence. "Elise, she's pregnant." The words dropped like a stone in my chest. "What?" "She just found out. She was going to wait until things calmed down to tell you." My mouth went dry. Pregnant. My sister, brash, composed, always in control, was unraveling quietly beneath the surface, and I hadn't seen it. "She hasn't told Colin," Mom continued. "Or anyone, really. She doesn't want pity." "No," I said, almost in a whisper. "She just asked for work, and she showed up every day." It hit me then. How much she'd been carrying while quietly chopping carrots and scrubbing pans next to line cooks who had no idea she was trying to rebuild her whole life from splinters. And now my family wasn't just knocking. They were leaning. I could feel the old pattern creeping back in, the pull to rescue, to fix, to become the reliable one, the backbone for everyone else. But this time I didn't flinch. "I won't give money," I said gently but firmly. "But she still has a job here. And if she chooses, she has a future here. That's what I can offer." "She's embarrassed," my mother said, her voice softening for the first time. "She thinks she's failed." "She hasn't failed," I said. "She just hasn't finished falling yet, but she's standing again. That matters more than you think." I ended the call, heart pounding, and stepped back into the kitchen just as Lindsay emerged from dry storage, a crate of lemons in her arms. Our eyes met. She didn't know I knew. Not yet. So I said nothing. Just nodded once. She nodded back. Later that evening after service, she lingered again, her apron wrinkled, hair coming loose from the clip. "Elise, yeah, I want you to know I'm not here for money or pity. I didn't come crawling back. I know. I'm not even sure why you gave me the job." I looked at her for a long moment. "Because someone once opened a door for me when all I had was failure in my hands," I said. "They didn't offer a rescue, just a chance." She swallowed hard. "It's harder than I thought, earning everything." "Good," I said softly. "It means it's real." She hesitated. "Would it be okay if I stayed with you a few nights, just until I figure things out?" "You'll have your own key," I said, "but only if you're the one locking up the restaurant tomorrow." Her eyes misted. "Deal. The first thing you learn in a kitchen like mine is this: no one cares who you were before. Your name, your backstory, your last name, none of it matters when the tickets start flying in and the fryer's hissing like a lit fuse. You either hold the line or you don't." And Lindsay, she was learning that the hard way. For the first few weeks, my staff didn't treat her like anything special. They didn't know she was my sister, and I didn't tell them. She was just Linz, the new Suze with too perfect eyeliner and not enough scars. They made her prove herself, just like I had to. She peeled potatoes until her fingers cramped, burned 2 pans trying to keep up on the sauté station, forgot to label the cream sauce her first week, and got publicly corrected by our prep lead, Alonzo, whose standards were stricter than mine. But here's the thing that surprised me most. She didn't flinch, not once. She didn't cry, didn't blame, didn't storm out with a flip of her ponytail and a wounded ego. She just kept showing up, kept failing, kept learning, quietly. One Tuesday, I watched her from the corner while she tried again to plate the roasted squash salad. She had the components down: roasted delicata, microgreens, spiced pepitas, maple tahini drizzle. But her lines were off, her plating too busy. She scraped the dish clean with the side of her knife and started over. Then again, and again, until finally, on the 4th try, she got it. She didn't look around to see who noticed. She just nodded to herself and passed it down the line. That night after close, I left her a note on the prep counter. "That salad had intention. Keep going." She didn't mention the note the next day, but I found it folded into her back pocket when she took off her apron at closing time. The small things started changing. She stopped wearing mascara to work, started tying her hair back in a messy bun instead of her usual sleek twist. I caught her laughing with Alonzo over broken yolks one morning and trading playlist links with Talia, our pastry lead. Slowly, the team accepted her, not because of me, but because she earned it. At home, things were different too. She moved into my guest room and offered to pay rent before I even asked. She cooked dinner twice a week, nothing elaborate but thoughtful. One night she made soup and left a sticky note beside the bowl. "Thanks for not saying I told you so." Some nights we sat on the couch watching old Food Network reruns, not talking about the past, just breathing the same air again with a little less judgment and a lot more understanding. She asked about the bakery once. "What did it feel like?" she said. "When you lost it?" I thought for a moment. "Like I'd been erased." She nodded, eyes distant. "That's how I felt when I saw the empty bank account, like my whole life had been a performance, and the audience just walked out. There was nothing I could say to fix that, so I didn't. I just handed her a bowl of popcorn and let the silence hold the weight for us both. Then one night around closing, she surprised me. We were cleaning the walk-in when she said, "You're not the person I thought you were, Elise." I turned to her. "What does that mean?" She shrugged. "I thought you were soft. When the bakery failed, I thought you were fragile." She looked around at the bustling, clean lines of Hearthline, the open kitchen, the tight, proud team. The menu still scribbled in my handwriting on the chalkboard wall. "But you're not soft," she said. "You're deliberate, that's stronger." I didn't say anything, but her words stayed with me long after we locked up, because for so long I'd believed that quiet meant weak, that grace meant surrender, that rebuilding gently made me naive. But watching Lindsay, watching her realize that kindness could coexist with structure, that dignity didn't have to be loud, I saw something shift in both of us. We were no longer sisters defined by childhood rivalry or the ghosts of a shared past. We were women, working, healing, earning side by side. The morning Lindsay went into labor, she didn't say a word about it. She was on prep like usual, slicing radishes into near-transparent discs, when she paused, gripped the counter, and let out a soft breath that sounded too deliberate. "You okay?" I asked, not looking up. She lied, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. 5 minutes later, she dropped the paring knife. That's when I saw her face, pale, focused, with that glazed-over look of someone trying to outpace nature. I stepped closer. "Lindsay." She turned toward me slowly, like movement itself had become too much. Her eyes welled, not from fear but from pressure, from holding too much in for too long. "My water broke," she whispered. The words hung there like steam in the air. We didn't panic. I grabbed her bag from the office. She had packed it 3 weeks ago, just in case, and walked her out through the back door, avoiding the dinner crowd trickling in. My sous chef took over the line without missing a beat. At the hospital, she gripped my hand through every contraction. No screaming, no theatrics, just grit. The baby, a girl, was born just past midnight. Lindsay named her Isla. No middle name, just Isla, as if there was no need for anything extra. Just this small, brand-new truth placed gently into the world. I held her in my arms the next morning, when Lindsay was too tired to keep her eyes open. She weighed almost nothing, smelled like sleep and warm cotton. It hit me then, just how far we'd come. I had spent years chasing purpose through pastries and menus and reinvented spaces. But in that moment, standing beside the hospital window with a sleeping baby in my arms and my sister finally resting without fear, I felt something deeper than success. Legacy. Not the kind measured in accolades or square footage, but in calm, in presence, in the strength it takes to show up for someone, even when they once didn't for you. The next day, I returned to the restaurant, still smelling faintly of baby powder and exhaustion. My staff had managed the kitchen without me. Sales were up. Tables full. Talia had invented a new crumble dessert she called the Isla without asking permission. And in my office, waiting on the desk, was a small envelope with Lindsay's handwriting on the front. Inside was a simple note. "I know I'm not owed anything, but if there's room in this new world you built, I want in. Not just as your sister, as someone who finally understands what you built." And beneath the note, taped carefully to a business card, was a tiny apartment key. She'd found her own place. I stared at the key for a long time, not because I wanted her gone, but because she'd chosen, of her own will, to leave, to take the step I once had to take in silence. Only this time she wasn't running. She was rising. 3 days later, I visited her new apartment, a modest one-bedroom tucked above a bookstore with a small porch and creaky floors. Isla was asleep in a hand-me-down bassinet, and Lindsay had a whiteboard on the fridge with a kitchen schedule scribbled in colored markers. "I want to come back full-time next month," she said, offering me tea. "But for now, can I still be on Pastry Station Sundays?" I smiled. "You earned it." She hesitated. "Is it strange that it's peaceful even though I'm starting over with nothing?" "No," I said. "That just means you're finally starting with you." That Sunday, I returned to the restaurant before opening and placed a small envelope in the hostess stand drawer. It contained a lease agreement for a furnished one-bedroom above Hearthline's second location. In Isla's name. No announcement, no fanfare, just keys to a future. A kind of quiet inheritance. Not because I owed Lindsay anything, but because I'd learned, through loss, labor, and lavender-glazed cakes, that the best power is the kind that whispers, not demands. And sometimes the best way to say "I forgive you" isn't in words. It's in showing up when no one expects you to, and handing over a key. 3 months after Isla's birth, our family group chat, once dormant, lit up with a single unexpected message from my father. "Isla's welcome party this Sunday. Elise, we'd love to contribute dessert." I stared at the screen. My father, the man who used to brush off my bakery dreams with a tight smile and a "be realistic," now volunteering to bring sweets to a gathering he hadn't even been invited to yet. I didn't reply, not out of bitterness, but because I didn't need to anymore. The old Elise would have read that message 5 times, drafted 3 different replies, called Lindsay for advice, wondered how to interpret the tone. But the woman I'd become, she had a business to run, a niece to love, and no time to untangle strings she'd already snipped. So I showed up that Sunday, not with an agenda, with a cake. A 3-layer olive oil and lemon sponge with mascarpone cream and basil sugar. Not for show, for Isla. The party was hosted at Lindsay's new apartment. Tiny, yes, but she'd transformed it with soft lamps and wildflowers in mason jars. Isla's handprints were framed above the door, and Hearthline's playlist hummed softly in the background. I arrived late on purpose. Let everyone else settle first. When I stepped inside, the room paused. Not because I was a surprise, because I was different. I walked in not needing anyone's permission to be proud. Lindsay met me at the door, her eyes bright. "You came." I held out the cake. "With dessert." A soft laugh. "Dad brought cookies." Of course he did. The living room was crowded. My parents, some aunts, a few cousins I hadn't seen since before Sweet Rise closed. Everyone trying to pretend nothing had ever broken between us. That was fine. I didn't need the apologies. I'd made my peace. Midway through the party, my mother pulled me aside, her voice low. "You've done well, Elise. Your restaurant, the way people talk about it. It's impressive." I met her gaze evenly. "It's not just a restaurant, it's mine." She nodded, lips pressed together like she was holding something back. Then she surprised me. "You're the backbone now," she said quietly. "Of all of us." I blinked, not because I needed that validation, but because I hadn't realized how far the shift had gone. Later, as people started to leave, my father tried to make conversation. He asked about my second location, about the herb garden, about the bourbon glaze on the pork loin he saw in a Yelp review. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was shrinking in his presence. He was trying, not to control me, to catch up. And he couldn't. That's when I knew the power had shifted completely. Not because I demanded it, but because I'd stopped asking for permission to be the woman I was always meant to be. That evening, after the last guest left, I stayed to help Lindsay clean up. We folded tablecloths in silence, the clink of glass and the soft shuffle of baby toys the only soundtrack. As I reached for a stack of plates, she touched my wrist gently. "Elise," she said, eyes full. "You saved me." "No," I replied. "You saved yourself. I just didn't stop you this time." She reached into her pocket and handed me a folded piece of paper. A letter, addressed to Isla Harper. "I'm starting her memory box," she said. "This one's from you. I want her to know who really raised us." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I didn't read the letter until later. In it, I wrote not about our family's failures, but about grace. About building something when no one believes you can. About staying soft in a world that mistakes loudness for strength. I told Isla that her name meant island, and that even islands are shaped by quiet waves. That was nearly 2 years ago. Now Hearthline has 3 locations. One in St. Louis, one in Columbus, and the third, a small cafe with a bakery counter, opened 6 weeks ago in Dayton. Yes, that Dayton. I didn't make a big announcement, but I did drop off a gift basket to my parents' doorstep on opening day. Inside, a sampler box of Hearthline pastries, a note that said, "Still flipping pancakes, but the syrup's on the side now." No reply, and that's okay, because some victories don't need witnesses. Some stories don't need rewriting. They just need to be told fully, without shame, without rage, just truth. Quiet, strong, whole like me. If you've ever rebuilt yourself from rock bottom and came out with more softness than bitterness, this story was for you. Tell me in the comments how you found your own power, especially when no one thought you could. And if Elise's story resonated, please like and subscribe, because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a woman standing in her own light, apron on, hands steady, ready to begin again. Thank you for walking this journey with me.